Hey y'all, hope you're doing good today. So, I want to share some more thoughts on this book by Lavrin called Nietzsche An Approach. And this is part two of a two-part video series, very short. But I want to discuss the difference in, how did I put it, chasing truth versus getting wisdom, right? Because we know in the Bible we are told to that the principal thing is to get wisdom, and with all of our getting, we're supposed to get understanding, right? And so there was something that I shared in the part one of this mini series about chasing truth. And so I shared a little bit. It was a very brief video, 15 minutes or so. This one will be a little bit longer, but I read a little bit out of this book, an excerpt on page 30 and 31. And he essentially says here on page 31, the principal thing is no longer to chase the inaccessible truth, and that's a capital T, truth. I think that's capitalized on purpose, right? But to impose upon chaos as much regularity as our biological earthly existence requires. And so I'm going to share a little bit more with you all today, a good bit actually, and some thoughts. We're going to break down some words, do some word study, and I just hope you find it interesting. So, and I've got my coffee. I need to drink a little bit more to wake up, I think. You ever have days where it almost just feels like the universe is telling you to sleep? It's like super quiet around here, and it's never this quiet. It's kind of Twilight Zone quiet, if you know what I mean. And it's extremely overcast and very cool, just perfect hammock napping weather, which I can't get to. I don't have time for that today. But I guess I could be doing that instead of the video, but I prefer the video, right? But yes, I'm choosing the video, and so I hope that you are finding a good balance in your life between resting and doing what you need to do and doing what you want to do. So, cheers to that, and I hope you have something great to drink and enjoy for the presentation. Okay, so I'm going to pick up on page 31. It says, I'm going to reread a little bit of what I read yesterday to kind of, remind us, right? It says, the principal thing is no longer to chase the inaccessible truth, but to impose upon chaos as much regularity as our biological earthly existence requires. And since a proceeding of this kind anyway involves the risk of indulging in errors, we can at least draw a line between the life-bringing and the life-destroying errors. And then it says, in Nietzsche's words, truth is that kind of error without which a certain species cannot exist. The value for life is ultimately decisive. And so I wrote, we want those who are committed to their truth, right? Not the capital T truth, but their truth of immorality, being immoral. We want people who are committed to their truth of being immoral, living immoral, to be transparent about it. To me, it's about honesty versus deception. When you're thinking about these big concepts of truth and wisdom and, all this stuff, right? Philosophical type thought. To me, it comes down to that, which is the dividing line that's spoken of, in the Christian Bible, right? Deception and lies, the father of deception, Satan, versus living honestly. That's where it's at. So it says the distinction between true and false in its old metaphysical sense is thus obliterated. In all it all amounts to the question as to how far an opinion is life furthering, life preserving, species rearing, and we are fundamentally inclined to maintain that the falsest opinions, to which synthetic judgments a priori belong, are the most indispensable to us, that without a recognition of logical fictions, without a constant counterfeiting of the world by means of numbers, man could not live, that the renunciation of false opinions would be a renunciation of life. To recognize untruth as the condition of life, that is certainly to impugn the traditional ideas of value in a dangerous manner, and a philosophy which ventures to do so is thereby alone placed beyond good and evil. To me, this is all just a very poetic way to acknowledge that free will is part of the divine design, right? And so again, some people will choose to do what they know is not the right thing. And we're going to talk about what it means to be right or to live rightly, and how we determine that, right? Because I think sometimes we can, especially through the lens of mental illness, we can tell ourselves, well, sometimes we may look at people who are living immorally, right? And it's not like those people out there, it's not like I'm perfect or any of us are perfect by any means. But I'm talking about just very obviously, with no desire to try and learn and grow, you know what I mean? And be better day by day. It's just, and self-evaluate people who are not willing to do that, who don't want to do that. That's what I'm talking about, right? I think sometimes we can look through the lens of mental illness and say, well, maybe they're truly doing the best they can. Maybe they think they're doing the right, quote unquote, thing. You know what I mean? But and we could get all into this big debate, or go down this rabbit hole of, when do people really know what's right versus wrong, and who determines that, what determines that, and all this stuff, right? And we're not going to get super, super deep into that. We're not going to do that deep of a dive into this stuff. But again, I'm just giving you things to think about to get the wheels turning, right? It's just really interesting to me. I hope you enjoy it too. But essentially, that's what this is saying to me, is this is the way this life experience is created to be, that we are all to have free will. And so your truth is rooted and grounded, in your beliefs, paradigms, right? And then other people may have different beliefs and paradigms. But yet we have, governments and law and everything who say, well, this is right, this is wrong over here, or whatever. So there's definitely a sense of, an objective right versus wrong. But we're going to look at these words. These are super interesting to me, okay? I'll pause here and go ahead and do that. So truth, and this is all from the Online Etymology Dictionary. Truth, it says, is defined as faith and faithfulness, especially through the lens of loyalty, right? Because it says fidelity to country, kin, friends, loyalty, disposition to be faithful, veracity, quality of being true, a pledge, a covenant. So truth is about commitment to, it could be a group, your family and your family's way of thinking and approach to life, your friends, any type of a political group, whatever it is. It's like this loyalty, and that is the gauge, one's gauge for truth. It's associated with truth, right? And then by that, I think we can, eat of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and then that's where you get a lot of judgment and pointing fingers going on, right? and the whole debate over objective truth versus my truth and your truth and all this stuff. So, right before that part, I read about essentially free will. It was talking about errors, and I want to look at that word because it says the principal thing is no longer to chase the inaccessible truth, and it goes on to elaborate and says we can at least draw a line between the life-bringing and the life-destroying errors. And truth is that kind of error without which a certain species cannot exist. That's what Nietzsche says. So, in looking up the word error, it says a deviation from truth. Remember, we just talked about what truth is, okay? Made through ignorance, inadvertence, a mistake. And it's from, this is really interesting, from errare, E-R-R-A-R-E, meaning to wander, or to err. To move about aimlessly, such as, not being on the straight and narrow, not being on your path, see, but taking all these twists and turns along the way. So to wander. And so that is essentially the core essence of error. And so very interesting. We're going to elaborate on that here in a minute, but let's just keep this in mind. I also looked up the word true, and it says faithful, honest, and also steady in adhering to promises. Again, we have this essence with truth and true. We have this essence of a commitment, a promise, an oath, to something or someone. And to me, it's when you think about one's alignment of actions and words, Jesus through the Christian lens, and again, whatever your beliefs are, I hope this is still a valuable message to you, and I hope you can apply your own lens and get something from the message. But Jesus, is described as the Word, literally being the Word, in action, materially, physically, literally. And so, and he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So, for those who believe in Jesus, right, then that's our gauge for truth, right? He set the example. So that would be our loyalty, right, to our family. He's calls us friends, and so it's a loyalty, it's a commitment, a relationship, right? So I want to take a look at the word fact. In the 1530s, it says it's a thing performed, anything done, a deed, right, good or evil. But in the 16th and the 17th centuries, it was commonly referred to as like an evil deed, right? A fact was an evil deed or a crime, which is really interesting. And it's from the word facere, F-A-C-E-R-E, meaning to do. So again, we have this essence of action, okay? Facts being actions. And so we also have wisdom. Making sure that I didn't skip anything that I really wanted to share with you all. Yeah, I think that's good. So, wisdom. I think sometimes we make wisdom and truth synonymous with one another, but just for fun, let's break it down. So the online etymology dictionary says wisdom means knowledge, learning, and experience. And then to be wise, the word wise means having the power, which I love how it brings in the essence of power. I think that's important because it's like an endowment. See, having the power versus not. There has to be an opposite, right? Having the power to judge rightly. So here we're kind of getting a whole nother angle, you might say, on this concept, especially if you have always thought of truth and wisdom as synonymous. You're getting a whole new angle, a new way to look at this. So now there's power brought into the equation, there's judgment, and there's judging rightly. There's this essence of being right, okay? To be wise is from the Proto-Indo-European root wide or weed, W-E-I-D, meaning to see, and it says hence to know. I love this. I love this because I think a lot of times we just take what is told to us or presented to us in some secondhand kind of abstract way. If we sense this expectation to buy into whatever is being told to us, I think that we just automatically sometimes take it as fact or truth. But again, to be wise, having the power to judge rightly, from the root word W-E-I-D, meaning to see, hence to know. So this is kind of explaining in depth that you can know if you see, right? How much do we hear, but we never actually see with our own eyes? That's something to really think about. And that's what I've done on my path, on my journey, my walk, is to reevaluate all those things that I was very certain of. And I realized, I haven't seen all these things for myself with my own eyes. I was just told these things. And it's just like in the Bible, I forget what verse it is, but it essentially says, I think it's 1 Corinthians chapter 3 something. I'll have to look it up. But it says, in order to become wise, you have to become a fool. In other words, you have to let go of and dismiss and get totally rid of, throw away all these things that you were sure of, that you thought made you wise. That's a part of it. And then it says you have to do that to become wise, like truly, actually wise. So that's part of the process. And that's elaborated on in this book, in the next section here. And I love that Nietzsche, he says right here, he calls, it says he first had to expose the official objective philosophy as a comedy of self-interest to show, in fact, that there was no such thing as a disinterested seeker after truth for its own sake. And then he says, suspecting personal reasons, conscious or unconscious, behind it all, Nietzsche made the refutation of any cocksure transcendental truth a prerequisite of truthfulness itself. Right? Hence his spleen against all canonized philosophers. So, in other words, anybody who's just very rigid and very sure of themselves, well, that's hard, because that can be us sometimes. But I think you have to always be willing to question yourself, not to let other people make you question yourself. That's different. It has to be instigated from you genuinely. Otherwise, it's manipulation. You know what I mean? But I personally click the best with people who are that way, who are not hard set, in any particular beliefs. Because to me, life is a continual growth process, growth journey. It doesn't end. I'm reminded of God, what's his name? It's one of Adam Sandler's, I assume, one of his friends. He's in a lot of his comedies, his movies used to be. They haven't put out anything in a long time that I'm aware of. Rob, what's his name? His first name's Rob. He's funny. But there's a movie that they're both in where Adam Sandler's in Vegas and he's getting married, and Rob Schneider, he's the not the pastor, I forget, the wedding chaplain, I guess, at the chapel. I forget what they're called. And he's going to perform the ceremony for him, and he's talking about the symbolism of the wedding ring, and he's just going, it goes around and around and around. There's no end. It's not like a square. It doesn't have corners. There's no end. And so when I say things like life is, a journey of constantly growing, there is no end, I can just immediately see him, talking about how there's no end. They're like, yeah, we know. So it's just great. I love comedy. But anyway, I totally forgot where I am. But yes, wisdom, right? And being willing to question old paradigms and beliefs. So we were talking about the word wise, having the power to judge rightly from the root WEID to see, hence to know, because you've seen it, right? That makes you wise. And then, if wisdom is the power to judge, having the power to judge rightly, then what does it mean to be right? To look up that word, right, it's in reference specifically to actions. It says being just, being good, fair, and also in conformity with, not just back over here like with truth, not conforming to or being loyal to your country, your kin, your family, your friends, or anything like that. A covenant, a pledge, a group. No. But in conformity over here being right, in conformity with moral law, right? And then it says proper, fitting, according to standard. Okay? And there must be a standard, that provides context and a paradigm, a mental structure that provides order to chaos, right? By which we choose our actions. Ultimately, it's about acting, how we act, right? Living and doing. But first, we have to make a choice, right? There's the choosing part. So the word choice replaced the Old English sire or sire, C-Y-R-E, meaning free will. Okay, there has, again, which is part of what this realm is all about. But first, there has to be a choice before the actions can be taken. And so, yes, wisdom is having the capacity to judge rightly. And remember, to be right is to be just, good, and fair in your actions, conforming to moral law. Okay, now truth is in alignment, truth is alignment of actions to promises. Now, your promises are your commitments or your family, loyalty to your family. Your family's belief system can be bad. So, if you are in alignment with that, then you're living your truth, or a person is living their truth, right? Which, any immorality is bad, technically, but it's all about, is someone who is committed to an immoral paradigm, are they being truthful about it and transparent about it? Or are they being deceptive about it and hiding it? See? That's what it comes down to for me. It all matters. But, yeah, and then again, error, which we looked at earlier, is a deviation from truth. To get one's actions out of alignment with a covenant or promises, right? In other words, your words and your actions aren't matching. Okay? So technically speaking, if you're walking your talk, then you're not in error. You know what I mean? It's kind of like what you see is what you get. Wouldn't it be nice if everybody was that way, All right, so going back to Jesus, he says that I am the way, the truth, and the life. I love how in the book it's talking about, that we can at least draw a line between the life-bringing and the life-destroying errors. So he's all about life, and truth in that regard. So that's why a lot of people see that as the capital T truth, the real truth, and the way, as is described. But he was our example, right? And not just of truth, but of wisdom. Both. He was the example, for both. And again, we are instructed to get wisdom. But then there's the whole, I forget where it's at in the Bible, but it's somewhere in there. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. So again, wisdom is knowing how to judge rightly. And I find that interesting if you think about Jesus being called the truth. I am the truth. And then it says, ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Is kind of like, the whole concept of Jesus and what he did for humanity, his sacrifice for us, to intercede with a God that requires that. If you have that belief, then the result is that your soul, your spirit is set free, from condemnation, eternally in the hereafter. So I thought that was interesting. First time I'd ever read it that way, right? You shall know the truth. I'm just thinking of the truth versus, Jesus, literally. If you know Jesus, then, you will be set free. So, if you want to take a look at this just symbolically, even if you, don't have Christian beliefs, or even whether you do or you don't, if you just want to take a look at this symbolically, metaphorically, it's kind of interesting because, Jesus and the sacrifice of Jesus can be viewed metaphorically also, and it's not to nullify, any other meaning behind it. It's just that I think there can be layers to truth. It can be a both and, not an either or. So I want to say that, but metaphorically, I can look at the concept even of his sacrifice as being the example that, we have to sacrifice living worldly, our worldly self, not like our physical body, but our worldly mindset, being invested in a way of life that is essentially just living for material things, and to keep up with the Joneses, and live for other people and other people's acceptance, and, everything that it means to live worldly. It's like, in order to really be set free, because all of that is just many different facets, or different avenues that all lead to the same place, which is a prison. It's a prison. Trying to tick all these boxes, and living worldly. But if you can let your ego, which is typically associated with what the part of a person that wants to live worldly, if you can sacrifice that and let that part of you, your mindset, go or be sacrificed, then you are free. Because suddenly, it doesn't matter if you have, all name brand clothes and, a particular type of car, and if you're, impressing your neighbors, your family, or you're no longer living worldly. It just doesn't matter to you anymore. You see all that as fake, and for some people, see, here's the thing. Some people, that is their truth, genuinely. That's their truth. And maybe for a lot of us, to varying degrees, I don't think it's always black and white, but for some of us, we can be fooled into thinking, is this how it's supposed to be? Are we supposed to, like, some of us we never really buy into that kind of life. But, when you're trying to meet people and make friends, or if you're dating, whatever, it can be kind of hard because people are attached to varying degrees to living worldly, because we are all in the world. But to me, it's about to what degree a person is in the world but not of it, and the more that a person is not of it, the more I'm going to click with them, so, but, anyway, and I mean, look, I just, my daughter and I painted Halloween nails. Y'all know I never paint my nails. This was fun, though. I picked up some little stickers, so, I mean, it's, you got to enjoy some of it, I guess, but my point here is that you can be free, if you shall know the truth. If the truth is sacrificing one's own ego, right, looking at this through archetypal symbolism, Jesus and what he did, then the truth shall set you free. In other words, you're no longer living to please your ego, which wants validation from society, from the world, because you have a bunch of stuff or you're doing things a certain way. You know what I mean? So that right there is going to be the sword that divides. A lot of times, family members, spouses, that probably never should have been together anyway. If one is living worldly, one's not. So, to me, that's the sword that divides when you think about truth. So, and remember, one person's truth is not another person's truth. Yes, but there are people who living worldly, that is their truth, and they make no apologies for it. They're just open and honest, but that is their truth, right? And then of course there's the opposite, people whose truth is being in the world but not of it. But then you have people who I think it's easy because so much of society buys into living worldly and materialistically. A lot of people, I don't know if I'd say a lot, but some people pretend that living worldly pretend that living not of the world is their truth, when their actual truth is living worldly. And those are your wolves in sheep's clothing. That's the difference, is the fig leaves. The difference is deception and hiding and omission, not being transparent. So I want to get into the concept of faith, or just, looking at the word faith, because going back to truth was defined as faith or faithfulness, fidelity to country, kin, friends, loyalty, etc. So I view truth being associated with faith here as faith meaning loyalty or commitment, But the word faith is actually from the Latin fides, F-I-D-E-S, meaning trust. Okay? So see, this makes sense now. Truth, we're talking about two different concepts, truth or trust, okay? But truth is said to be related to faith, also fidelity to country, kin, or friends. And then faith means trust. Well, who are you going to put your trust in, see? This is where you can have your truth and my truth, or his truth and her truth. Everybody can have their own truths. I'm not saying there's not an objective truth. I'm just saying a lot of people live by their own truths because they are placing their faith or their trust in their country, their kin, their friends, whatever, right? So here we can start to see how we can, learn and grow and get to a place of conscious awareness where we can shift away from the muddiness of truth that everybody argues over and people die for, stuff like this. We can shift away from that over here to wisdom. Because again, the Bible says that wisdom is the principal thing. And with all you're getting, we're supposed to get it, and also understanding. And then it says that it doesn't omit truth. It says that Jesus is the truth. See? So if you look at the symbolism we just talked about, you kind of see you start to see the bigger picture. I love to just do deep dives and it makes my head spin. I am kind of wandering for a while all over the place, and it's like all these twists and turns, on this journey I go on every time I dive into a topic. But at some point, it's kind of like you start to come back out of that rabbit hole, and you are elevating, and you're seeing things from a bird's eye view, from an expanded view, and then you see the bigger picture. And that's what I've done, and I just like to share it with y'all, and I hope you enjoy it. But faith is related to trust, confidence, reliance, credence. It's from the root of fidere, F-I-D-E-R-E, meaning to trust. So trust is about what? Trust is about relationship. So again, when you're thinking about the concept of truth, are you going to put your trust in your country first, your friends, your family first? It's not that you can't. It's just what's going to be that rock for you, that primary ground that you're going to root yourself down into and create your paradigms from, that your beliefs spring from, and therefore your actions, and therefore your entire life. It's that there's an old saying about your actions create habits, and and there's like a snowball effect, and everything just eventually culminates in your life lived. And I just, people can fool you. People that those people in the middle I was talking about earlier that pretend to, be this way with their truths and beliefs, and really they're this way over here. I mean, they can affect you, and you just want to. I'm gonna say you. But I just want to have my discernment sharp enough that at least going forward, I am not even capable of being persuaded, because I want to make sure that my trust is in the right person, right? So that my truth cannot be tampered with, and I cannot be manipulated and coerced and exploited. But trust is about relationship. So the word trust from 1200s means reliance on the veracity, integrity, or other virtues or sound principles of someone or something. So now we go back here to having faith in your country, your kin, your friends. Well, again, that's fine and good, but if you're looking at what it really means by going down this rabbit hole and how it's all founded on trust, and trust is related to reliance and reliance on the veracity, integrity, and other virtues or sound principles of someone or something, then suddenly you have a lens to look through. Okay? As far as who you really trust, and therefore who you allow to be close enough to you that it affects your truths and your actions in your life. Who do you really want to be committed to? You know what I mean? Who are you going to let influence your paradigms, the way you see the world, the way you think, the way you feel? I want it to be someone of real virtue. That's the only person that I want to allow to influence me. See? And ideally it's the ultimate. So you have, just for interest, the Old Norse word traust, T-R-A-U-S-T, meaning help, and confidence. Okay? If you want to dive into the Bible, even online, and do some Google searches, and all the ways that Jesus is described. Again, if you don't want to look at it, through the Christian lens, from that viewpoint, look at it from the archetypal lens, of the helper archetype. So trust, from Traust in the Old Norse, meaning help or confidence. Protection and support, those helper roles. Yes, you have the Dutch Troost, T-R-O-O-S-T, meaning comfort, consolation. Jesus is described as the comforter. Okay, you have the Gothic Trausti, T-R-A-U-S-T-I, meaning agreement or alliance, because when you are trusting someone, there is like this unspoken spiritual type of agreement that you're going to affect one another. You know what I mean? So it always, for me, comes back to the numinous, to the divine. The word numinous is from the Latin numen, meaning divine will, or properly divine approval expressed by nodding the head. And this was super interesting, and I'd like to maybe do a video just on this, but I wanted to share with y'all. So it's from nuere, N-U-E-R-E, meaning to nod, and there's others that also mean to nod. Also from the Old Irish, as noi, A-S-N-O-I, meaning to promise. And I was thinking about, I've heard of the land of Nod. It's in the Bible. And this is where in Genesis, Cain was exiled after he murdered his brother Abel. Okay, east, it says east of Eden. So that's the land of Nod. So the people that were from Nod were descendants of Cain, actually. So, yes. And I just barely glazing the surface of this whole concept of numinosity and divine will, and I associate that with goodness, but yet it's related to divine approval expressed by nodding the head, and then the land of Nod is where Cain was sent. He committed murder. I think that, if you want to look at all this, it's just allegory, just a story type metaphor. It's, again, goes back to God's will being us having free will. We have free will. But yes, this was another layer of interest for me. Nod is actually the Hebrew root of the verb, and it means to wander. To wander. Nod, to wander. Again, remember, to err, when you're talking about error, to err also means to wander, to twist and turn, So, yes. So there's no adherence to a lifeline or the straight and narrow way, right? What's often referred to as, I guess the middle path, or just, keeping on that path of doing what's right, So that's where the concept of this lifeline comes in. We need to be able to judge rightly, and we can only judge rightly when we have something to go by, I think that the fruits of the Spirit are really good descriptors of what we can look for, both in ourselves and also in others. They're great guidelines for actions that can be observed and practiced. But I want to point out here that these are not called fruits of choice or fruits of one's character. They're called fruits of the Spirit, again, because it's about relationship. Real truth is about faith, which is about trust, right? And trust requires something or someone to trust. So when you have, through the Christian lens, the Holy Spirit inside of you, that is said to be your internal guiding light that tells you right from wrong, and helps lead and guide you. So it is about relationship, right? Fruits of the Spirit. And what is all of this essentially culminating in? All of these fruits of the Spirit. What Spirit are we talking about here? It's the Spirit of love. God is described as love, and the Holy Spirit is God, is a form of God, via the Trinity. So it's love within us, right? And love within us is transformative, 1,000,000%. If you think about it, if you ever go through a hard time in life where you're just, people that you've cared about were found out to be wolves in sheep's clothing, or, you lost some people you cared about, whatever, and you just feel, or whatever has happened, whatever's transpired, if you've ever gone through a period in your life where you just didn't feel loved, it affects you greatly. In the absence of love, it's like we can't think straight. We can't, act right, feel right. It's like we're a mess, essentially. It's in other words, to me, love is the most basic requirement, the most basic human need. Which, through that lens, then, I think that we can look at things like the hero's journey and just our life's journey in general as being about finding God's love. And it's not that we have to find it because it's hidden somewhere, because there's another verse in the Bible that says, nothing can come between us and God's love for us. In other words, it's always there, but it's us that has to work, right? Or put down the ego, or find its place and tame it, and use it for good purposes if that's possible. But it has to be at least minimum secondary. But we have to be the ones to cultivate the eyes to see and the ears to hear so that we can recognize God's love that's already there, right? So when we recognize it, at that point, it becomes like a spiritual beacon. It's like this light beam, it's our spiritual lifeline that we can grasp onto, right, with our mind and heart, and that keeps us from wandering. So it's kind of like acting from love, okay? Now, that doesn't mean being a pushover. It's really important. I'm going to say that. The world labels stuff very wrong, and I think we just draw automatic assumptions without really even consciously intending to, with a lot of the words in our language. But I think that acting from love is where it's at. Essentially, we need to make sure that we are not losing sight of this guiding light inside, which is the numinous quality of love. And we're doing that by avoiding, right, or putting away, doing away with living worldly, because living worldly goes back to that William Blake poem. These five senses of the soul distort the heavens from pole to pole. They teach us to believe a lie when we see with and not through the eye. It's seeing things differently. There's two ways to look at things, like this old saying. And so the ego is what has to be put off so that we can get rid of that old pair of glasses or those old eyes, and we can see things right. And once we can see things right, then we recognize God's love in our life, and that creates the lifeline, the determining factor, what we put our faith and trust in, the relationship, an actual relationship, and we are fulfilled with that basic need of being loved. And it also is our guidance for how we should love others. And we have exact actions to be patient, I forget what all the fruits of the Spirit are. I've got them hanging in there on my wall, but they're just great. They're exact actions to take. And to check yourself, and to also look for in others. That'll give away a person's true intentions right there if you really, really use those for your lens, especially if it's consistent, because none of us are perfect. We can all make mistakes. Again, to err is human, to be human is to err, well, however it goes. But someone who's consistently showing signs opposite of those fruits of the Spirit, then that tells you that there's a different spirit there producing different fruit. See, so we have to be discerning enough to see that. And don't forget that wisdom is judging rightly, and to be right is related to what's fitting for the situation, what's proper, how you should respond to a situation in the right way, what it calls for. What does this call for? You can still act from a place of love, but the world may say you're not being loving. See? So again, you have to just notice these subtle attempts at getting you off and away from that guiding light inside of you. But to be right is of the actions to be just and good and fair in conformity with moral law, to be proper with your actions, or fitting. And so again, this is why a lot of people try to look at God, in the Bible as showing signs of good and bad. But yet it says, God is love, and there isn't, He's all good. There's nothing bad in Him, and yet He allows free will for people to choose to do bad things. So, wisdom. That's where it's at. And I hope that this has been really interesting to you. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope I didn't make your head spin too bad. I hope I didn't make it spin at all. I just really hope I got the wheels turning for you. And maybe something to journal on, or maybe there was something that you thought of that you can research, or maybe I reminded you of something that you've already found that has piqued your interest in the past, and maybe I reminded you of that or something like that. So thanks so much for coming along to hear the message. I hope that you have a beautiful day, and I'll see you again very soon.